Hey psych people! So we are so close to being done. AP is on Monday, so I just want to get this video out to you guys so you could have some time to watch it and then still study. So without further ado, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a long one because there's a lot of words and a lot of new stuff. So I just want to start so you're not here all night because you probably have other things to do. So we're going to start with thinking in language. And so first we're going to start with a prototype. A prototype is pretty much the item we see when someone mentions a broad category. So if I were to mention birds to you, you'd probably be like, ooh, blue jay. I mean, I guess that's a common bird. If you want to do like penguin, that's fine too. But you're not going to be like, ooh, South African flying wingbat. Okay, that's not a bird. But the point is, you're going to pick the bird that's most common to your cognitive abilities. Then heuristics is how we access information. So our availability heuristic is we're most likely to know what we're familiar with. So if someone's like, what's the capital of Maryland? And say you just didn't know what the capital of Maryland was, you're probably going to say Potomac because that's the city that's available to you. You're not going to be like, ooh, Rockville, because like you live in Potomac. And then the representative heuristic pretty much is the group represents the whole. So like say child labor laws weren't a thing. Then if someone showed you a child and an adult, you're like, which is more likely to be working? You'd pick the adults because they represent what you know as adults work and children don't. So obviously like a child can work, but you think the adult is the worker. Then next is a fixation, and that is when you are so fixed on some idea that you can't shift to another idea. And this is most common in functional fixedness. So like if I give you a pencil, you're going to be like, oh, I have to write with it. You're not going to think, let me use it as a hair accessory. So it's just a matter of like what you're familiar with. Then rigidity is just being very concrete in your thoughts, having a hard time shifting to other ideas and other thoughts. And then there's the confirmation bias. So pretty much we have a list of things that we are cognitively like drawn to. So pretty much say someone tells you about a new diet and you start doing that diet and it's like you see results and you're just really enjoying it, and someone comes along and says that's not a good diet. Well, you're going to try and like not believe them, and you're going to go online and you're going to find something that goes along with your views that the diet works. You want to confirm what you already think is right. Then there's something called the mental set. Pretty much that's only just saying if solving a problem worked in the past, then you're going to try it again because you think it's going to work again. Then the overconfidence bias, we've all had that test. We come out, we're like, that was a breeze. And then we get it back and we get an F. We were way too overconfident. Belief, perseverance, and belief bias. There is one huge difference between these two. Belief, perseverance, you know you're wrong. Like, you have so much proof that is telling you you're wrong, yet you still carry this belief. Belief bias, you're just biased to your own beliefs, but it's not proved to be wrong. Big difference. Divergent and convergent thinking. I think divergent thinkers are those out-of-the-box people, the ones who have the crazy ideas. And then convergent thinkers are just those people who kind of stay in the box. They're very logical, they're very rational. So just two different types of thinking. Then there is Rotter with explanatory style. We have an internal locus of control and an external locus of control. Internal is you are in control. Like you feel in control of your own life, your own destiny. External, you're like, nope, the world is against me, like I have no control over my life, and that's the bad one. You want to have the internal locus of control. Then off to language. Okay, we're making good time. Phonemes, or phonemes, totally butcher that word, is like or ba. They're just super basic types of speech. They mean absolutely nothing. They're the normal sounds. And then a morpheme is the smallest unit of language that actually carries meaning. So like having ed at the end of a word or ing at the end of the word, they carry a meaning and they're tiny little words. And then the critical period for language is 2 to 7 years. Pretty just memorize that. There's stanguage. Oh my god, my words. Stages of language acquisition. It starts with babbling. So when babies are making all those little noises, like that's how it starts out. Then it goes to holophrastic speech, and that's pretty much those one words when a kid will be like water or like ice cream, even though that's 2 words, so bad example. Ice or water or happy, like one word, very simple phrases. And then telegraphic speech is going to be your very simple phrases, and pretty much just transitioning into normal sentences like normal humans. And then a few more things about language is Noam Chomsky took the nature side. He says all babies come into this world and they have the language acquisition devices already in their head. They're programmed pretty much just to learn language. And then B.F. Skinner just comes and he's like, no way. He thinks it's nurture. He thinks kids are positively reinforced when they do learn new words, because when you said your first word, I'm sure your mom like clapped for you. So he said children are very, they want this reinforcement. So they will speak because it gets them what they want. And then linguistic relativity is pretty much language affects culture and culture affects language. First unit's done. Okay, let's keep on going. And I skipped a page, and this is really awkward. Okay. So, intelligence and assessment. This one is, it was like Miss McMahon's least favorite unit, but I kind of like this one. So we're going to start out with the different types of tests. There's intelligence testing, which pretty much just tests how smart you are. So like that classic IQ test, you know. Achievement versus aptitude test. Achievement's what you've learned, and aptitude test is what you're capable of learning. And then there's objective and projective tests. Projective tests are more subjective, and then objective tests are just quizzing you on this one very concrete thing. So some specific tests. The Stanford-Binet test is the IQ test that has been working for a very long time because it has a good normative curve, which we'll get into later, but it's a very reliable, which we will also get into later, IQ test. So, and then there's the WAIS and the WISC, and the significance of this, it's the first test that was given a separate one for adults and a separate one for children, and that's the only reason why it's significant. The Myers-Briggs is personality. If you refer to my first video, I have a lot more on personality. The thematic apperception test is pretty much the one where they show you the picture and you have to create a story, and it's going to tell your personality as well. And then Rorschach, all the ink blots, say what you see, and if you see weird things, then you have a weird personality. Okay, not exactly like that, but you feel me. And then the SAT is an aptitude test, while the ACT is an achievement test. And like I said, aptitude is predictive, achievement is how much you've already learned. Intelligence quotient, aka IQ, how smart you are. I don't think you're going to need to know the equation, but just in case, it's your mental age over your chronological age times 100. The Flynn effect is basically saying people are getting smarter every single year, and IQ scores are going up. So I guess that's a good thing. And then G factor is if you are smart in one area, you're smart in all of them. It's very like you are a generally intelligent person. And then Gardner comes along and says, no way, people have multiple intelligences. So someone who's very visually intelligent, they're very artistic, might not be very, let's say, naturally intelligent with like nature and trees. It's all a matter of what type of intelligence you have. You don't have to have them all like the G factor states. And then there's something called savant syndrome, and it's someone who performs pretty low in a lot of areas of intelligence, but they have one area where they just excel, like they are just in the genius range. Crystallized versus fluid intelligence. Crystallized stays with you throughout your life. Fluid, we peak around like our early 20s or something like that. We peak young. Pretty much crystallized is the facts and the experiences you acquire throughout your life, and fluid is like how quickly you process and like the less concrete intelligence forms. Emotional intelligence, it's all about how much empathy you have. Girls tend to be a little bit more empathetic, but emotional intelligence is actually very important. And then the degrees of mental retardation, just know that to be diagnosed with that, you need to have a low IQ score. They use IQ to diagnose it. It used to be other measures, but just know it's diagnosed from IQ. Some statistics. Statistics are kind of hard to explain just because, you know, it's easier to see it, but I can't find my whiteboard. But pretty much the normal bell curve it's just supposed to look like this. It's supposed to go up and come back down with the mean in the middle of the bump. So our standard deviations, it goes 1, which 68% of the population is going to fall between. Then you go to 2, and that's 95% of the population. And then at a standard deviation of 3, that's going to be 99% of the population. And then you have these weird little 1% on either edge of the bell curve. So pretty much, data can also be skewed. So usually you like to have your mean like nice in the middle, but if you're positively skewed, then the tail, always remember it's the tail that's going to be going towards the side. So the tail is going to be going towards the positive side, and your mean is going to get pulled way up while the curve stays the same. Negative skew, the tail is going to be really flat on the negative side and then peak at the positive side. So your mean is going to be pulled towards the negativity side while the majority is still over here. So one big thing about this is if you do have skewed data, you need to use the median instead of the mean. And then another last thing with statistics, I know this isn't a very interesting unit, is scatter plots. So you all know what a scatter plot is, but just know the correlation coefficient is 1 if it's a perfect positive trend, and it's -1 if it's a perfect negative trend. And it has to fall in between -1 and 1. You can't have like a positive trend of like 50. It's just not possible. Reliability is a big one. Test, retest reliability. If you take the test again, are you going to get the same score? Inter-rater, if I have multiple graders, am I still going to get the same score? Split half, if I split the test in half, is the beginning and the end going to still give me equal results, or am I going to miss like 10 in the beginning and get the whole end right? Alternate equivalent forms, if I take form A and I take form B, are people getting the same scores on them? Validity. So predictive validity is how well can this test predict how I'm going to do in the future. So like SAT, how well can this test predict how I will do in college? Content validity, is this testing me on what it's supposed to test me on? Face validity, I'm looking at this, is this what I should be tested on, or is it like I'm taking a bio test and it's talking to me about B.F. Skinner? Okay, that might work, but you get me. And then there's a few key people. There's Binet, the big IQ test, and then there's Gardner with his multiple intelligences. So that's pretty much intelligence and assessment. Motivation and emotion. Okay, we're going to start with motivation. So what motivates us? Well, first there's something called the drive reduction theory. We like to maintain a nice homeostasis. So when something is off balance, maybe our body's getting too hot, then we're gonna need to put on shorts. Or we're getting thirsty, so we need to drink some water. We like to maintain a nice little body balance. So our primary drives are food, water, those very basic, we are animals drive. Our secondary drives are going to be like money, comfort, security, like a little bit more emotional drives. We have two types of motivation. We have intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic is it comes from within. So I play volleyball, so I'm just going to use that as an example because that's what's available to me. Availability heuristic. This is why I don't make jokes. Okay, so I love to play volleyball, and I play volleyball because I love it, and I love the sport. But an extrinsic motivation would be, say a coach came up to me and said, I'm going to give you a scholarship for this sport. Then my motivation will be, I need to get this scholarship. And it's not going to come from within anymore. It's going to come from that lovely piece of college money floating towards me. So pretty much intrinsic's a lot better to have than extrinsic. There's a few cognitive consistency theories. I'm just going to talk about them really quickly. Approach, you have two favorable outcomes. So that's like you can either go to the movie or you can hang out with your friends. They're both good. Approach avoidance is you have a very favorable scenario, but it has a big downside. Like you can get this job, but you're going to have to move and you don't want to leave your house. So that would be an approach avoidance theory. Then avoidance, it's like, that's just bad. Like you could either sit in your room for 5 hours and do absolutely nothing, or you can eat, I don't know what's a bad food, I like lima beans, but some people don't, or eat lima beans for the rest of your life. Two bad options. A big one is the Yerkes-Dodson law about arousal. Some people need more to get their optimum level of arousal. So people that are doing crazy bungee jumping and skydiving, they need a lot to get their arousal high, where some people just need a good book and a cup of tea. And it's all what you're about. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're going to start with the basic needs. You need food, you need water, and you need shelter. And then the safety needs, this is you need to feel safe and secure. You don't want to feel like you're going to get axe murdered every 10 minutes. Love and belonging, you need people that care about you and people that love you. Esteem needs, you need to feel good about yourself. Aesthetic needs, this is a weird one, you just need like beauty in your life and you need to look at pretty things. Cognitive needs, you need to help your brain like stay active. And then self-actualization is when you have all your needs and you are very zen. And then you have your emotion. Emotion is pretty simple. There's only a few theories. You have James Lang, who's like, you have a physical symptom and that leads to a feeling. It's like very primal. Canon Bard says they happen at the same time. So let's say you feel really nervous and you get really sweaty. You're going to start getting really sweaty and feel that nervous feeling at the exact same time. Then Schachter-Singer two-factor, or the Schachter two-factor, very fancy name. And it's basically saying that it happens from both a physical symptom, but it's also because of the cognitive that's happening at the same time. So if you, feel really sad, you're going to be crying, so you're going to have tears, that's the physical, but you're also going to be thinking about something that makes you sad, so both things happen. And then the contemporary model comes in, and they're cognitive, and they're just like, we are not animals, like, what's with this physical stuff? They throw the physical out the door, they say there's going to be an event. So we're going to take an event of a funeral, because that is dark, and I'm having a dark day. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I just thought of a funeral. So you have a funeral, it's an event, you're going to have a thought, and that thought is going to be this person died. That thought is going to make you sad. So it's all now cognitive. There's no more physical symptoms. And then Paul Ekman says that there are culturally universal facial expressions. And just to give you a few of these, it's like a frown means sad or a smile means happy. And if you do these facial expressions anywhere in the world, you're going to get the exact same response. Moving right along. Okay. Time is decent. Okay, normal psych. This one, I really like this unit, so hopefully I'll be able to explain it well. So first is Hippocrates, and Hippocrates says we are only abnormal because there's a weird balance of fluids in our head. Clearly that's not true anymore, but he was one of the first people to realize why people were weird. So there's a few disorders. Schizophrenia is a big one this year. They have positive and negative symptoms that they display. Positive symptoms are the stuff you see, and the negative symptoms are the stuff that's more internal and you can't see. So delusions and hallucinations. This one, some people tended to get them confused, but if you understand the difference, then you should be totally fine. Hallucinations are something sensory. So if you're hearing something or if you're seeing something, so hearing voices and seeing shadows, that's hallucinations. Delusions are thinking things that are not right. Like if I thought that I was Superman and I could fly and I jumped off a building and tried to fly, that would be a delusion because I'm thinking I can do something, but I actually can't do it because it's not possible. Word salad is their words are very jumbled. They're very hard to understand. Like you can understand what they're actually saying, but if it's like I were like pizza, fly, frog, picture frame, like they make no logical sense. The dopamine hypothesis, they say people with schizophrenia just have too much dopamine in their brains. And then another model is the stress diathesis model, and it combines both environmental factors and genetic factors, and that's what gives you the disorder. So like if you're really stressed, it could make schizophrenia worse. Okay, there's some somatic symptom disorders. There's conversion disorder, where you have absolutely no physical reason for having the physical symptoms you have. So if I wake up one day and I can't walk, but like my spinal cord is completely fine and I don't have a broken leg or anything, it's actually my mind stopping my legs from walking. And then there's hypochondriasis. That's basically like you start sniffling and you're like, oh my God, I have nose cancer. Like you take everything to the extreme. You probably have multiple doctors. You have all those little pamphlets. You're constantly scrolling on WebMD. You know, we all scroll on WebMD. Yeah. Okay. And then Munchausen syndrome is pretty much you want to feel like the hero. So you constantly do things that, I don't know, maybe, I'm trying to think of an example that isn't too dark. So you maybe cut your fingers because you want to get stitches and you constantly want people to be like, oh my God, like, here, let me get you some flowers, like you got stitches. Like, that's a really weird example. I'm not feeling it with these examples. So next is going to be bipolar. Bipolar is very up and down mood episodes, manic to depression, and it's classified in two ways. You don't need to know the difference, but just so you know. Bipolar 1 is those mood fluctuations. Bipolar 2 actually exhibits signs of delusion, so some people confuse it for schizophrenia. Major depressive disorder, you're very down, you're very sad. It can happen one time, or like one episode, or it can just like take over your life. It's just a matter of how severe it is. OCD, pretty much you have an obsession. So like if your obsession is cleanliness, you're like, oh my God, everything has to be clean. But the compulsion part of it is you have to go clean the bathroom 8 times an hour. And body dysmorphic disorder is you see something that isn't there. Like it's mostly with your face. So like if you see that you are just like, oh my God, I have huge ears. But everyone that sees you are like, your ears are totally normal. Like, what are you saying? You just have a dysmorphic view of your own ears. PTSD, you witness something that's horrible and you have trouble living your life normally. Anxiety disorders, social phobia, you have a hard time interacting with people. Specific phobias, you have a hard time interacting with something and it makes you sweaty and scared and you just can panic. Agoraphobia, you have a fear of not being in control and you have a fear, that fear is so severe that usually it actually keeps people in their houses and it's hard for them to go out. Dissociative disorders is you completely dissociate from your identity. You feel like your personality and your body are two different things. And if you're in a fugue state, then you just kind of, it's when you're displaying the symptoms of the dissociative disorder. And then dissociative identity disorder is you completely separate from your identity. And sometimes people even end up like moving away for a little bit and people wonder like where they went and then they come back. And it's a weird disorder. Eating disorders, anorexia is very internal. It's like kind of a battle with yourself. Like, can I eat 2 calories a day? And it's usually actually not caused by people being like, you need to diet. It's very internal. And the girls that, it's girls and boys, but I'm just going to use girls because it's more common. They tend to be super skinny and it's very dangerous. Then bulimia nervosa is categorized more by someone binging and then purging. But they don't have to purge and they don't have to binge. But it's pretty much, this is more for the girls that have the social pressure to lose weight. It's very external, people telling them that they're fat. Then they're more likely to become bulimic. So pretty much what they'll do is these girls actually tend to be normal weight or overweight, so it's almost harder to tell that they are bulimic than if they were anorexic. So some neurodevelopmental disorders, ADHD is characterized by hyperactivity, inattentiveness, and oh my God, I can't remember the last one for the life of me. I really should have wrote it down. I did not take good notes for this. If I remember it later, I will tell you. But the 2 big ones are having trouble paying attention and being very hyperactive. Some personality disorder, and then there's autism, which they thought it was a intelligence thing, but it's actually just a disorder that hurts social interaction. Personality disorders, there's only a few you probably need to know. Antisocial, this one's really scary because the people are so charming, but they're actually just really manipulative and they have 0 empathy. So when you hear like sociopaths and psychopaths, they probably have this disorder. But not all people with this disorder are psychopaths. Let's get that straight. Borderline personality disorder. They're always on the border. So one moment they could be really happy and then one thing happens that they don't like and they just go crazy and start screaming. Like their life is always on the border. Histrionic personality disorder. These people need to be fabulous and they need to be the center of attention all the time or else they just go crazy. The narcissistic personality disorder. This person is all about them to an extreme. And they don't put anyone else's needs before theirs. And yeah, this is a bad one. Dependent personality disorder. They depend on people or things to make them feel whole. So if they're in a relationship, it could be bad because they could get into an abusive relationship or they could become dependent on drugs. They just need to depend on something for their own normality of life. Moving right along. We have 2 more units left, guys. This is good time. Okay. So we're going to do some therapy. So the psychoanalysis point of view of therapy is pretty much everything is in the unconscious mind. So you're not fully aware of it, but it's under all the layers of your cognitive. So some things they might do in therapy is free association, where they say a word, like say you were attacked by flamingos as a child and now you're very stressed and you can't go near any types of birds. They're going to say words like pink, and you're going to have to say the first word that pops up into your head, and they're going to try and just diagnose you and see what's going on inside of you. Transference, this one's kind of weird. So say you had like a really terrible relationship with your husband and you go to the therapist is going to be like, I'm your husband, like transfer your feelings onto me, say to me what you would say to him. And it's a little different from like the cognitive role playing in that you really see your therapist as the person, and it's just a more intense form, and it's a little creepy, not gonna lie. Then you have dream analysis. They're just like, what are you dreaming about at night? And you tell them, and then they're saying, oh, well, this is what's wrong with you. And then there's hypnosis, where they put you into this very relaxed state with the idea that you're going to say more, you're going to reveal more about your unconscious. And then Sigmund Freud, he's the biggie. And then Carl Jung, just remember him. He's that psychosocial stages, so a little less sexual. And then the behavioral idea, remember this is our Skinner, this is the conditioning. What they're going to do is they're going to do something called aversive conditioning. So say I was a super smoker and they couldn't get me to stop smoking. They're going to pair cigarettes with a pill that makes me really, really sick. So every time I look at a cigarette now, I'm going to think of feeling really sick, and I'm not going to want to smoke anymore. Systematic desensitization, it's best with phobias. So if someone is super terrified of spiders, they're going to come up with a list, and they're going to slowly move towards scarier things. So they're going to start with, think about a spider. Then they're going to be like, here, hold the stuffed spider. And eventually, after all the steps get through, they're going to be able to like hold a real spider. And then you have something called flooding, which never works, ever. It usually just gives the person a panic attack. So it's what you do, say, back to the person that's afraid of spiders. If you were to go to the National Zoo, pick up the Australian extra hairy tarantula, and you were going to throw it at him, that's flooding, and that's awful. And then there's something called a token economy. So everyone who's gone to Dave & Buster's, you get your tickets, you have tons of tickets, and then at the end you get to trade in your tickets for something cool. And then there is behavioral contracts, all those people that have teachers that are like, these are the class expectations. And then you have to sign your name, and then your parents have to sign their name, and then you throw it in your backpack, never to be seen again. But that's a behavioral contract. You will behave a certain way, and they will treat you a certain way, and yeah. So cognitive, the rational emotive therapy is pretty much think rationally. So say you got a really bad grade on a test and you're very depressed because you're like, I'm not going to get into college. They're going to encourage you to think rationally and be like, you have more tests and you have another chance to like get a good grade in this class. Stress inoculation therapy says if you get stressed, you need to have a plan in place to release that stress. So maybe it's go punch a pillow or go to the bathroom and cry, but just have a plan in place. Thought stopping is you have a thought and you say no, you say stop. You stop that thought in its tracks. Two big people are Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis, and these people said negative thoughts lead to negative behaviors. And then on the flip side, Seligman, Martin, he said that positive thoughts lead to positive behavior, and thinking positively is actually very, very effective in the cognitive world of therapy. So, humanist theory, we have Carl Rogers. He's the big guy. This therapy is very non-directive. They're just like, talk to me, and you talk to them. And instead of offering you like concrete advice, they're going to just restate, they're going to mirror, and they're going to clarify. And you're pretty much just helping yourself. They're going to give you unconditional love and positive regard, and they're just going to make you feel all warm and fuzzy about yourself. Then there's the medical or social biological theory. And pretty much there's two types of medications. There's agonists and antagonists. Agonists make a neurotransmitter go, and antagonists stop a neurotransmitter. So we're going to talk a little bit about antidepressants. The most important kind you need to know is the SSRIs. So that's Prozac and Zoloft, like the big name brands. And pretty much they're just going to prevent serotonin from being taken up again, so you have more serotonin and your mood can better be regulated and controlled. And then anytime you see lithium or lithium carbonate, think bipolar. Oh my gosh. Sorry, my computer just froze. So think bipolar. They are mood stabilizers. So lithium mood stabilizers. Then neuroleptics or antipsychotics, Thorazine, Haldol, those are for people that are mostly like schizophrenic, like they have those delusions and hallucinations, and it helps with that. And it also makes sure there's not as much dopamine in the brain. Benzodiazepines or penes. I really don't know how to pronounce that word. They are for anxiety though, so Valium and Xanax. They make sure that you have enough GABA. So GABA is responsible for that parasympathetic response. And if you're anxious, you have a lot of anxiety and a lot of sympathetic response. So that GABA is just going to help calm you down and, take a few steps back. Last thing you need to know is just health psychology. It's like so minuscule. Just know that diet and exercise therapy is pretty much they make you eat better and move more, and it's supposed to help you. Very self-explanatory. Oh my gosh, we are on our last unit, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. Okay, so social psychology. Yeah, I probably should have introduced it. So there's something called social norms, and they are expectations that we are expected to follow. So I'm expected to eat my dinner with a fork instead of my hands, and I'm expected to go to school every day and wear normal clothing and not my pajamas. So pretty much okay, we're just going to move on because I think you know your social norms. We did a whole project on it. Social dilemma or social trap is when you do something in the short term that benefits you, but in the long term, it's super bad. So I think like global warming, like you love riding your cars and getting from place to place in a timely manner, but it's like killing our polar ice caps. So don't get social trapped. The bystander effect is people defer responsibility to each other. Like the saddest one is Kitty Genovese, where she was getting stabbed and everyone just assumed everyone else would call the police, so no one helped her and she died. Attraction. Attraction is pretty much being attracted to another individual. I'm pretty sure you know the definition. The biggest thing for attraction is how close you are to someone. So if you are close to another person proximity-wise, you're more likely to be attracted to them. So you're more likely to be attracted to someone who lives next door than someone who lives across the world. And then another big one is similarity. So I'm just going to go in order of most important. Similarity is how much you have in common with the person. Like, if you guys both play sports or if you both play an instrument, then you're more likely to be attracted to someone who is similar to you. So I guess opposites do not attract all the time. And then another big thing is this is kind of with looks. We tend to be more attracted to people with symmetrical faces. So if a face, I'm just going to use an extreme example. So if, I had, one eye, then I'd be perceived as less attractive than if I had two eyes in a normal spacing. So we're going to go to sociocognitive theories. The attribution theory is we have two different types of what we attribute success and failure to. Dispositional and situational. Dispositional is your personality, like what you are you smart, are you athletic? Situational is did I sleep well last night? Is the teacher good? It depends on the situation. So the fundamental attribution error, it has to do with when other people have success, we're just they got lucky, or they must have had a really good teacher. We never think, they're really smart, or they're really nice, or we never think about it in their personality. But when we succeed, we're like, oh my God, I'm the greatest person ever. And when we fail, we're just like, oh my God, it was totally his fault. He just set me up. And then obviously when other people fail, we blame it on them. We're like, oh, they're so dumb. Or we're just like, oh my God, they're so weird. So as you can see, what great cognitive abilities people have. We're going to keep on going with some techniques of persuasion, I guess. So the foot in the door technique is you're going to peek your foot in just a little bit and be like, hey, can I have a Hot Wheels car? Then your parents are going to be like, yeah, okay. And then you're going to be like, hey, can I have a car seat? Your parents are going to be like, what? And then you're going to keep going until you get to car. So that's what I was trying to get to. Like, you start small and then you go up to, like, the big ticket item you want. Or you can do the door in the face technique, where you ask your parents for something ridiculous, like, hey, guys, can I have a Clydesdale horse? And then your parents will be like, yeah, no, go to your room. And then you can work your way down to a ferret. And then there's the in-group, out-group bias. We tend to be more favorable or more biased towards a group that we're part of. So I'm going to say I'm part of the group called Teenage Girls. So I'm going to be more biased to my group than, say, another age group. The scapegoat theory is we like to put all of our angry emotions on a very innocent victim. So this I think is like big with groups that bully people. They have a lot of negative emotions, so they'll make the 6 of them will just make fun of one person just because they're an easy scapegoat. Just world hypothesis pretty much is an extreme definition of karma. So if you see someone slip and fall in the hall and scrape their knee, instead of helping them, you're just like, ugh, they deserved it. Like, only bad things happen to bad people. Like, good things happen to good people. And this is kind of bad, but at the same time, it's in our psyche. Social desirability bias. We like to do things that are socially desirable. So if I like to think about it when you go to the doctor's office. If they're just like, do you drink 3 glasses of milk a day? You're going to be like, oh, yeah, I do that. And you're not going to admit to doing some things like eating 8 cookies a day because that's not socially desirable. So some group influence. These are kind of scary. De-individualization is when you are wearing a mask or you're invisible or you're part of a crowd. Your actions aren't directly, no one's going to know it's you. So you tend to do more evil actions than you would if you didn't have this mask or identity shift. Social facilitation says that if you're performing an easy task, then a crowd is actually going to make you do better. But if you're doing something difficult, then a crowd is actually going to make you do worse. Social loafing, group projects. Need I say more? You're going to put all the responsibility into the group, and everyone's actually going to end up doing worse than if they just worked alone. The group polarization effect pretty much says if you have a belief and you're put in a room with a bunch of people with the same belief as you, your belief is actually going to get stronger. And then groupthink is if you're in a group, you're not going to want to voice your opinions because you're not going to be the only weirdo with an opinion. So you're just going to go along with the group, and this is so dangerous because people just lose all forms of creativity, and everyone just goes with the group, which is bad. Persuasion, the central route, you give them facts, you give them cold hard statistics. Peripheral route is you give them pretty pictures and like fun jingles. And like they both work. It's just a matter of what you like more. So some big experiments that we just need to go through and then we'll be done. Zimbardo's prison experiment, he took a group of people, split them up half guards, half prisoners, and what he noticed is people actually took their roles to heart and their attitudes actually affected their behaviors really severely. Milgram's obedience study, he had people in one room and then actors in a room off to the side, and the people had to ask the actors a question, and if they got it wrong, he would shock them. Or the contestant would shock them. And it showed that people would listen to authority and they would shock the person up to the highest killing voltage if an authority figure told them to. And that's really scary in terms of obedience because it kind of shows us how the Holocaust worked. Then there's Ash's conformity study, and it's the ones with all the lines where it's just like, which line is equal to this line? And then everyone in the room would say the wrong answer. Then the contestant would they stick to their views, or would they go along with the group? And it showed that a lot of people actually went along with the group. The cognitive dissonance study is pretty much done by Festinger, and he gave one group $1 to tell the other groups that the task they performed was interesting and gave the other group $20, and the $20 group didn't experience as much cognitive dissonance because they were doing it for the money, but the $1 group actually convinced themselves that these really boring tasks were fun. This isn't a huge one. And then the last one is the Riceville experiment. And the Riceville experiment is a teacher took her class and split them up into brown eyes and blue eyes. And she told one group that they're superior, and she told the other group that they're not. And the kids actually believed it. And it kind of got out of hand, and it's super unethical, but it definitely proved a point. So that is our second semester. We stayed just under 40 minutes, and it's not going to be 40 minutes in like 2 seconds. But the point is, always, if you have any other questions, just send me a message. I hope this was helpful. So good luck on the test, everyone. Also, my first video is the first semester, so just refer back to that if you have questions from the first semester. So have fun, guys, and get psyched for psych.